Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Yeah, good.
So, hello everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. I had the pleasure to meet Robert, my guest today, Scoble, on Access Chat. axschat.com, and we'll give you a copy of that interview. But he blew me away. I'm so impressed with his brain and what he's doing, and I feel like I could just sit at his feet and learn and learn and learn. So we're going to talk about technology, and we're doing this episode the evening after the United States went and voted for a president, and we are still in flux with that. So we're going to look at the positiveness of what the world could look like based on work that Robert and others are doing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Robert, but then ask him to tell us more, because he really, really does have an amazing background. So he's worked with companies that are implementing the spatial computing. We're going to talk about spatial computing technologies today. And he is the chief strategy officer at Infinite Retina. And he's a futurist and a technology strategist. He's been a strategist with Microsoft, a futurist with Rackspace, and producer and host of a video show about technology at Fast Company. He's doing so many incredible things, but he also is the father of, he has multiple children, and he's part of our community. So we're really honored to have you on the show. And Robert, I hope you don't mind bragging about yourself, but I did not do your bio justice. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you've been involved with and who you've met, because I think we need to be hopeful.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people over the years. I've interviewed, I don't know, thousands of entrepreneurs. Even when I worked at Microsoft, I interviewed 600 employees, just employees at Microsoft, and really understood how that company worked. Everybody from Bill Gates down to the janitor, right? My dad was an engineer and moved us here to Silicon Valley in 1971, and moved us to a town called Cupertino, and in 71. And so I got to watch this entire tech industry grow up, in my backyard. Literally, I'm underneath an avocado tree. So Silicon Valley used to be farms, so we're sitting on the former farms of yesteryear, but now we grow technology. I mean, the guy who lives next door to me there works at Apple. The guy who lives back here works at Google. The guy who lives over there works at Cisco, and the guy across the street is a security engineer, right? So this is still the Western world's home of high technology, and China is certainly coming on strong lately. But I've been very fortunate to have met most of the world's great people. From Elon Musk gave me the first ride in the first Tesla before he gave his best friend a ride in the first Tesla. I've met Steve Jobs. Wozniak and I studied every morning in a community college. And he gave me some money back in '89. This was after he was Apple's co-founder, right? He was studying Spanish in a community college. And that just, led to experience after experience. I've been at the beginning of many, many companies. Uber was invented literally right in front of me in a Paris snowstorm. And quite a few things have started right in front of me. For the last 10 years, I've been writing books about augmented reality and studying that world of 3D sensors. I went to Israel and met with companies who were building mapping and 3D sensors and augmented reality over in Germany. And many of those companies Apple has bought since. So I've had a front row seat on the world for a long time. At Microsoft, I interviewed some of the pioneers in Microsoft research who did the work that led to the HoloLens. So been around for a while and got to meet a lot of people along the way, and not just technology at this point, politicians, music people, right, and chefs and interesting people along the way that I've met, and so that gives me a unique perspective on the world. And I study paradigm shifts, and I study both the successes and the failures. So we could talk about how companies screw up when paradigm shifts come around and how they go away. Borland WordPerfect, or I was in Nokia and BlackBerry's booths when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone that day. So I understand how things can change pretty fast. Yeah.
Well, the world is changing so fast. It's needless to say, intense is the word of the day. But what is
I
spatial
never would have.
computing?
I mean,
Yeah,
if you told me January 1st that our schools would be closed and my kids would be on Zoom class, I'd be like, "What are
right.
you smoking?"
I know.
You
I
know?
know.
And that's for a futurist like me, who usually is like pretty up to date. But I didn't see a lot of these changes coming that the pandemic brought. I mean, I saw them coming. I just thought they would take a decade to happen. And I mean, Netflix is real nearby here. They're seeing 7 times more usage than they saw in January. The e-commerce companies have all sped up 8 years, right? So the usage of Amazon and e-commerce and delivery services has sped up by more than 5 years, right? So this is pretty interesting time to be alive for a guy like me who likes new things, because we're
Well,
about to
and
get
you
a
know
lot
what?
of them.
Before we let me take back the question, because I do want you at some point to talk about what spatial computing is. But
Hmm.
I also agree. It's very interesting what's happened. And, looking at it from the lens that I look at it in, that making sure technology is accessible to everybody, that technology is enhancing humanity, blah, blah, blah. All the, I don't necessarily buy that technology is going to kill us all. I think technology can be a great equalizer for humanity. I,
Yeah,
I do understand it can be misused and it
yeah,
has
me
mis-
too.
but
IBM created the tattooing system for the Jews in World War II, right? So technology can be used for evil ends, and we all know that.
yeah,
And
that's a great example. But what
yeah,
does surprise you about what's happened with the pandemic? Because one thing that because I've seen silver linings. I've seen quite a
yeah,
few silver linings. And so what are
oh
you
yeah.
seeing as a futurist?
Well, I watch how people change behavior, right? I used to work in a consumer electronics store in the 80s selling VCRs, right? And I understood, and cameras and refrigerators, right? And um, I understood. I learned back then how people approach new technology and how they adopt it, and what their thinking goes through, right? And this, like I said, this just plowed the field, to use a farm metaphor. This plowed the field for what's coming next, which is spatial computing. Spatial computing is easy to describe. We're moving from computing that you hold in your hand or wear on you, right? A little a flat screen, a TV or a monitor, to wearing glasses where you can move through the computer. The computer is all around you. The computing is all around you, and that includes robots, it includes autonomous cars, and it includes augmented reality and virtual reality glasses, where you, a human, a robot, or a virtual being, a virtual thing, can move through space and move through the computer, right? Which is it's a big paradigm shift coming, that we're not going to be looking at little rectangular screens anymore, right? And we're getting good taste of this. I mean, if you have an Amazon Alexa in your house, you're getting taste of ubiquitous computing, where you can just talk to Alexa and have it respond to you. And we're starting to get autonomous cars. If you have a friend with a Tesla, they can take you on the freeway and show you that it's working pretty good. And soon it's going to work really well, even in cities. And that leads to a whole bunch of changes, right? Because transportation, what Elon Musk's original sales pitch to me was, I'm going to make transportation cheaper than a gas engine with electric engine and more fun, because an electric engine is a high torque engine. It goes fast, right? And you can see that playing out in our streets now, right? We're starting to switch our culture from, gas engines to electric engines. We're starting to switch our culture from a car that you could take apart and change the carburetor to a computer system that you're not even going to ever touch, right? It's too much technology to get into the middle of. You just replace it, sort of like an iPhone. And the cost of transportation is about to go from about $18 wholesale for $18 wholesale for something like an Uber, right, to about $2 wholesale for a Tesla that's self-driving without a driver in it. And when that happens, and Tesla's not alone, there's many companies. General Motors is investing billions of dollars in Cruise. There's Zoox and Waymo and a whole bunch. There's a whole industry of billions of dollars being invested in autonomous cars because of that, because of the economics. That when autonomous trucking and autonomous cars comes, the transportation cost goes way, way down. And when that happens, then we're going to see another level of adoption on e-commerce. Because right now, to get barbecue delivered from my favorite barbecue place costs about $10. In this world, it'll cost about $2. So when you start looking at transportation that way, that's when things really get interesting for a whole lot of reasons. And mapping is about to change. What we think of as maps is about to change. And cars are about to change. But I'm mostly focused on augmented reality because, the glasses you're going to wear from Apple in 3 or 4 years are going to be given the credit for changing everything in the world, right? All the other changes that are happening, whether it's cryptocurrencies or
Right.
understanding the transportation system, is going to all wrap up into the glasses. And so these glasses in 5 years are going to be pretty amazing. Right.
So, Robert, we talk a lot about on this show about how technology can benefit people with disabilities, people that are aging into disabilities, anybody that wants to be more independent and want to sort of control their own destiny. And you're talking about how much everything's going to change. And we were talking about all this stuff before this pandemic hit. And of course, the pandemic hit, and I had young people coming to me and saying, I'm an individual with a disability.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I have a Tesla guy coming.
Oh. So speaking of technology,
yeah, this is a great example of how much the world is changing now, right? Now you don't even have to take your car to the repair shop. The repair shop comes and visits you.
Well, your Tesla has Wi-Fi in it. So I know that last time when we were doing access chat,
Hi there.
we were actually doing it from the show.
Yeah, I'm on a podcast, so I'm going to pull the car. Do you need me to pull the car out, or do you want to do that?
Yes, that'd probably be best.
Okay.
Okay. Hand me your key card.
I'll give you the key card, and you can pull it out.
Okay.
Just don't.
And then just let you know your front door's open too.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. All right.
And just examples of key cards. Key cards are so much better for people to use than keys. So
most of the Tesla's done through your phone, right? And so I very rarely need to pull out my key card. But yeah, the world of products is radically. Now, if you put a piece of toast in the oven, it tells you, oh, that's a bagel, and we'll cook it at 93 seconds, and you never burn toast anymore. That's
So
awesome.
how do we learn to live in this new world as humans? And also, the thing that's so beautiful about the world is that technology is going to augment humanity to help us do more things. I love the
Even here, right? I'm showing you my new gimbal. This is a little robot with 3 little motors on it, and it's $130. And it does what a $100,000 Steadicam did just a few years ago, right?
wow.
And so the world is. This is how you learn how to live with it. You just go for it and start using it. And a lot of people don't. You know, a lot of people resist it. They come over and see, oh, I have a Sonos listening to me with Google on it, or I have a Facebook portal in the kitchen listening to me,
Right.
which a
It's
lot of
just
people
passive.
like, why would you let Mark Zuckerberg listen to you in your kitchen? And it's like, well, yeah, go for it, because it makes your life better.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, Robert, how do we make sure that, because I think what a lot of people worry about is as we're making all these changes, that the designers, the futurists, aren't not considering it from the lens of all people, which isn't really true. Because we are looking at it from the ways that it can improve people's lives. I know that with driverless cars, for example, one time I posted a post about how excited I was for driverless cars for my daughter with Down syndrome, and even my husband now that has dementia that cannot drive. And they said, no, we're scared of those because 3 people died. And I said, yeah, but there's 1 million people that die every single year in car accidents all over the world. So how do we make sure, or could you comfort us, because, that these products are being made to enhance all humanity?
People resist all new ideas. It's not just driverless car, right? I remember in my career, and this is the benefit of being old, or getting older, right? And living through a few of these paradigm shifts before, and seeing how people responded before, right? Even things like email and credit cards were resisted, right? And so, when I wrote my 3rd book, Ford CEO said, oh, our customer research shows nobody wants a self-driving car. Well, I stood in line to buy this Tesla with 1,000 people. And I interviewed the first 100 people, the videos up on Facebook. And many of them said, I'm buying a Tesla to buy a self-driving car, to buy the best autonomous technology, right? And people change their beliefs after the fact, right? When you show them a better way to live, they'll change their belief. And I have so many examples of that I'm hopeful that people will adopt this new technology. And it also makes me bullish on Apple, because Apple has 450 stores in the richest cities in the world, right? And they have the marketing budgets to get everybody to, and screw that. I've been to so many press conferences in the world, from Samsung to Sony to Huawei to whatever. And the average press conference, you'll have 1 satellite truck out front in the parking lot, right? Apple usually has about 20. So the world, when Apple announces something, the world is going to hear about it, and they're going to start changing in a big way. And that's one reason that I'm still thinking the world is waiting for Apple to make its move, right? Because it's really the only one who can get us to understand the potentials in this new world, right? But yeah, so
tell us a
so
little
yeah,
bit
so
about your book. Yeah, tell it.
yeah.
I know that.
Well, it's about the book
And
is
let me
about
just say,
7
he's the author of 4 books. The latest
Yeah.
book is The Infinite Retina, Spatial Computing, Augmented Reality, and How a Collision of New Technologies are Bringing About the New Tech Revolution. But he also wrote The Fourth Transformation, Age of Context, Naked Conversations. And so
Yeah.
your work is
Each one of these
so
books,
interesting.
each one of these books is wrapping. So I do a lot of video interviews. In fact, just before we got on the phone, I was talking with a guy who's doing all sorts of new hand tracking with these new technologies, right? A company that's coming along. So I do a whole bunch of interviews like that, and then wrap them up into books that predict decade-long trends. And this last book is about 7 industries that are going to see pretty radical change, you know, in the next decade because of these technologies, from manufacturing to retail. My friend is working at Walmart right now to make a new kind of Walmart experience for wearing glasses inside a Walmart, or using a mobile phone to find products, right? To education, we're starting to see some of the changes, but you know, my kids are staring into a rectangular piece of glass right now. In 5 years, they're going to be wearing glasses to do their education. And I walked around a virus in a VR app called Nano with a bunch of scientists, and I could actually touch the chemical structure of the virus in 3D space and move it around and make it bigger, and also see how all the chemical bindings happen, right? And so you start thinking about drugs or vaccines in a new way when you're learning this way, right? And kids, you know, I'm watching my son do some math right now. What takes him 10 minutes to learn today is going to take a minute to learn in 3D, because our brains work in 3D, right? You talked about your husband with dementia. Part of this is healthcare. And we talked with researchers down at USC who are doing brain research with VR and AR with all sorts of different kinds of patients, from people who have PTSD to people who have dementia. Dementia is a fracturing of your existence, right? Your mind is starting to lose the ability to make connections between things, right? So you forget people's names, you forget where you are, you forget what you're supposed to be doing. Well, the glasses can remind you of that and keep your mind all together a little bit better. And at least it'll remind you that, hey, this is your daughter that you're talking to, or this is your wife, this is her name, right? And so it can keep your mind a little younger and connected together, which will help people. But we have so many examples of that. University of Washington is doing pain research and found that VR can get rid of burn pain better than morphine. So this has an implication on our opiate addiction problem in America, right? And on and on. These devices are going to be give human beings superpowers in a lot of ways, right? And that's the danger of them too, right? Is
Right.
if I can solve PTSD, right, and VR can effectively solve PTSD. Is they're doing a lot of research with military people who are coming back with a lot of PTSD problems and have a high suicide rate, and they're finding pretty good results with that. Well, if it can solve PTSD, it can cause PTSD, right? If I'm holding a 360 camera in the shooting in Las Vegas, and you're watching live in 360, you're going to have PTSD the same way I am, right? And so now we have to worry about a whole bunch of new things. And privacy is a big one.
Right.
I'm very, I don't care about privacy that much myself, but I do care about what it leads to, which is the ability to control people. Because I saw 6,000 people running across Central Park chasing a Pokemon on a little phone, right?
Right.
Wait until that Pokemon is on the ground running, yeah, and in 3D in your glasses, and it's interacting with you and shooting at you. You're going to be even more likely to engage the Pokemon, right?
And people got hurt doing that. They got hurt chasing it. People fell off cliffs.
People
got
get hurt doing selfies. People every year a few people die doing a selfie of
Oh my
themselves
God.
because they fall off a cliff or something.
Look at me.
So,
I'm in a bikini on this gigantic mountain. Excuse me.
yeah. Yeah. So
So how do we us just regular people, how do we learn to live in this new world? How do we as people, you know, with disabilities, how do we use this new technology to help us, you know,
we're
better
pretty good
employees?
about learning how to use new things. And if you give the first thing, the reason I'm so bullish about this new world is I watched a 4-year-old girl pick up my VR headset without being trained, without asking a question, right? And instantly was able to figure out how to get into Job Simulator, which is something she wanted to do. Why she wanted to do that is interesting, right? Because she was watching YouTube. And she knew how to grab a file and move it from one place to another instantly without any instruction, right? This act on my Apple II took hours to learn the commands, to the structures, right? Because we didn't have graphics back then. We had to learn what was a file, what was a folder, how do we move something with a command from a certain folder structure to another folder structure, right? This, in 1977, that was computing. Today, a 4-year-old girl can grab the file and move it without having to read a book or anything. So this new world is going to be accessible to a lot more people than had been uh, able to compute before. There's 800 million people in the world who can't read, right? And so these people are going to be able to compute for the first time because they're not going to need to read, because it's going to work the same way this works, right? Every 1-year-old knows how to grasp an object and manipulate it with their hands. And the same thing is going to be true in this new world that's coming. And then you start thinking about all the architectures that are going to need to be built to have that world be built. You're going to have a 3D sensor on this. This is why the new iPhone is so interesting. It has a new 3D sensor on it that sees the world as 300,000 points of data. So you start moving around that phone and it starts seeing your living room in 3D, right? Well, the glass are going to have that on the front of it, and they're going to start understanding, oh, this is a coffee, this is a table, that's a chair, that's a window, right? It's going to start understanding the world because the computer vision that's being developed for autonomous cars coming along, right? You start looking at what the Tesla does. It recognizes it's seeing a dog or a bicyclist or a car or a stop sign or a stoplight. This is computer vision, bleeding edge computer vision, right? Soon your glasses are going to understand that about the world. So now you can start saying, well, oh, it's going to know where you're going to leave your keys. It's going to know where you left your coffee. It's going to know,
Wow.
right, all sorts of things, virtual and physical, that you've left in the world, right? Like I could
So,
leave a user interface right here and it'll stay here. It'll always be here, right?
so Robert, do you think that is I remember Doug, for us to when he's one of his little, he has two toddlers, and one of them, when they were really little, I mean, she was like 4 months old or something. She took his phone. She was playing with his phone, and she started pinching it to.
Yeah.
She just knew things, and so it makes me think that we're doomed as old as somebody that's old. It's like, is it that they're digital natives? Or they what's
I'd rather be old today than old yesterday,
well, true. That's
because
true. That's true.
I've spent a lot of time in nursing homes. My stepmother was in a nursing home for 7 years, right? And I watched those people, and they would just sit in their wheelchair, staring off into space and not using their brains for anything. Um, when I get to the old people's homes, which isn't too far away, I'm going to be wearing glasses. I can talk to the glasses, or use my hands, or maybe even use my brain to, hey, can you turn on CNN?
Right, right,
And
right, right.
it'll just appear. It'll, and so I'd rather be an old person in that world than an old person in the world where I
Well, and
didn't
that's a
have
great
the
point,
ability
because
to
even as with this morning with
entertain myself.
and of course it was a hard night for us. I stayed up a little longer than I should have,
Yep.
watching television,
Me too.
watching polls and
Yep.
voting. But my husband, it was so hard for him this morning, and he just was just standing there. He didn't even, it really hurts me for him. It
Yeah.
hurts me so much. And I love your vision. That's such a good point, because my husband's still there, but as his brain does this, you know,
Fractures.
yeah, it's chilling. It's chilling to
Yep.
watch. It's chilling to be scared that this might happen to you in the future. I mean, my husband has it because of a traumatic brain injury, so my kids or don't have to worry about genetics that way. But how it's just
Yeah.
so interesting, because how do we live our lives? How do we be excited about what's happening? I mean, because it's just so intense to be alive right now. And so solve all these problems for us, Robert. So
I
give it
can't
to.
solve all the problems. I can just study the investments that are happening in technology, and that's what I understand about the world. I mean, I dabble in politics and watch it, and I have one of the best Twitter accounts in the world, so I can watch the entire world on TweetTech, right? I can watch every world news brand in one column, next to investors who think differently, and next to journalists, next to people in the AR and VR space, right? And so I certainly am informed on how the world could go, and I certainly see the big problems with climate change and with unemployment coming. And in fact, that's why one of the reasons we wrote this book. Before the pandemic, we saw a jobless problem coming because like trucking is our number one job in America, 1.3 million truckers, right? Well, I can tell you that, someday those jobs are all going to go away. The autonomous trucks are coming. Now we could argue, is that 2 years away or 5 years away or 15 years away or 30 years away? But I think in the next decade it's coming, and it's going to be starting to eat away a lot of jobs in the next decade, right? And that's just in trucking. We haven't even started talking about Uber and Lyft and all the delivery services, and millions of jobs right there. And I was at the Game Developer Conference last year, like March last year, and I met a guy who worked in the supply chains, and he bragged to me. He said, "We just turned on our first fully automated cold storage warehouse, i.e., robots unpack a truck of salad comes in one door, robots unpack the truck and move it all around, and then pack 3 more trucks going to Chicago, right? All with robots, no humans." So I said, if I'm starting to hear about this like last year, this is going to be a real problem soon. That every warehouse is going to be fully automated like that, right? And so we have big problems with unemployment. Well, COVID just gave it all to us all at one time. It's like, here's 20 million people out of work. And I don't know that they're going to come back because, while Amazon hired 250,000 people in one quarter, which is amazing to think about how many people they just hired. That means the small retail store in middle America is not going to come back, right? And restaurants are going to be under siege because deliveries, right? Means a lot of new opportunities, but it means a lot of pain for a lot of people, and that's what change is. It's painful. People don't like to change.
Right. Right. I know. Do you think that we can move past this world, this new world, without the glasses?
No, no. The glasses are going to bring so many superpowers that you're going to have to wear them.
And what
And
about
people argue with me about that all the time. It's really interesting to argue with people about. Oh, I've never. People tell me. See, I have an advantage. I'm already wearing a $1,500 pair of glasses, right?
okay.
These cost $1,500 because my eyes are really shitty, right? and these are titanium frames, and they're the best of the optics out there on the market, right? These are the best of the best. When you get these Apple glasses or whatever comes, Facebook glasses, Google glasses, right? They're all spending many billions of dollars. Apple's spending $10 billion. Facebook's probably going to spend more than that on these glasses. When you get glasses, they're going to give you the superpowers to see in 3D the way your human mind works. So you're going to get all these advantages, right? And people are like, oh, I don't want to wear the glasses. I hate glasses. I go, you're going to have to wear them. First of all, if you want to fly an F-35 fighter jet, you already have to wear the glasses, right? You can't fly the plane without wearing the glasses. The glasses actually let you see through the bottom of the plane and see somebody flying beneath you, right? Right. So they give you superpowers, right? And so if you're going to fly an F-35, you already have to wear the glasses. Well, that's going to be true about everything in society soon. You
So,
go to a
Robert,
job.
but what if I'm blind? Tell me how it's going to work, because I still
Oh,
think you
it's
have
it.
superpowers even if you can't see traditionally, right?
Yeah, because the glasses are going to see everything in the world in 3D, right? And so now you start thinking about, well, what does sight mean? Sight
What is
means I
color?
can grab this, cup and drink from it, right? Um, well, what happens if the glasses know where that cup is and can guide my hand to it, right? Now, all of a sudden, I can do the same thing. And soon, the entire world is going to be mapped out in 3D, if not already, right? It's not very apparent that it is, but when you have a Tesla, you start seeing it. That the world is being mapped out in 3D and it's going to be understood. Like everything on the street. My Tesla sees garbage cans on the side of the street now, right? So, and it's pretty accurate about it, right? So it can build a 3D map in real time of the city you live in, all by these little Teslas moving around that are grabbing, everything from garbage cans to kids playing and putting it on the map. And so you're going to have a map that you're good. The infrastructure is going to know that there's a bucket in lane number 1 on the freeway, and your car is just going to switch lanes automatically. You're not going to know why until you
Right.
see the bucket, But the whole system is getting smarter and smarter, and that's what I'm saying. Soon you're going to have to wear the glasses just to participate in this system, right?
Okay.
And that's scary to a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to give myself up to a system. And I go, well, you've already given yourself up to system. Well,
right.
you've already given yourself up to systems with credit cards, right? And phones, right?
Right.
You're dependent on systems already. In this world, you're going to be really dependent on them. And that's where we can have some arguments about, how to keep this from being used for evil.
Oh gosh, I know.
Because once you have people on a system, you can use it for profitability, and you can use it for controlling people and getting them to vote or not
And
vote.
we've seen that done. So,
Yeah.
Robert, if you were a young person that was listening to this show, and maybe you're a person that, a young person with a disability, you're blind or you're in a wheelchair, or what would you recommend that they do? Right, because I have a lot of people coming to me saying, what job should I go after? And I'm saying,
Oh,
look at the technology, look at the AI, look at what AI can do versus what it can't do, if you can think of that. But what do
yeah.
you recommend for any of us?
Um, that's a tough one. If you're a young person, like I'm watching my kids, you're going to have to learn how to unlearn and learn things much faster than we did in our lives, right?
Okay.
You're going to have more careers than I had in my life, and the glasses will help you learn in real time to do new things, right? So, and that's a hard one for people to wrap their head around, right? Because this is going to be a feedback loop at some point. Like I said, in studying chemistry now, when I'm walking around a chemical structure in 3D with other people who are teaching me about it and say, hey, click on that one and see what it happens, you learn a lot faster, right? And so now you can see it starting to feed back on itself, right? Um, in terms of kids, I would definitely not look for a career that has any patterns to it. If you can see a pattern to it, including something complex like driving a truck, right? Driving a truck is actually a pretty complex set of patterns. But I can go on a drive with you and I can show you the patterns, right? And I can say, okay, this is the pattern to driving, and this is how a computer is going to start attacking this. If you look at something creative, some of that is patterns, but some of that is human. It's biological. It's right. We'll see a lot of it done by computers, but some of it won't be. And certainly anything bleeding edge, from computer science to chemistry to physics to anything bleeding edge, if you have a brain like that can be at the bleeding edge of those kinds of things, you're always going to have opportunity, right? And there's going to be jobs that don't have a good pattern. Nurses, right? Do I want a robot as a nurse? In many places I do, actually. I can sort of walk through that, but in many places I want a human being,
Right.
And so, and partly because human beings are really good at doing certain things, right? And we're biological. We are not predictable, right? We're not like a computer. A computer is like a light switch on and off, very predictable. Biological people, very unpredictable, as our politicians showing us.
As we learn.
Yeah, and that's the benefit. That's the advantage, right? So I would be picking things to do with my life that have to do with big problems that don't have a lot of patterns to them, that have a lot of innovation that needs to be done. And then you have to learn to use the tools to assist, right? Which the kids are, I don't worry about kids learning tools because they're on these things all day long. My son understands 3D worlds like Roblox, and his generation understands Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite like it's water, right? And so the kids are going to understand where the potentials are for this new world, and they're going to, the quality of their life is going to be dependent on how much of the internet they really figure out how to push around. And here's a good example. The Internet Archive has all of the recorded works of the Grateful Dead. They're free for you to listen to, right? But if you don't know that those are there, you'll never be able to listen to them, right? And you have to know that they're there, and you have to know how to tell Alexa to go get them, which is actually right now too complex. You have to tell Alexa to pull up its API and then go over to the Internet Archive and then, find those recorded. And then you need to know how to tell it to play. It's a lot of complexity, even for somebody like me who I have an advantage. I know they're there. I know sort of how to get to them. I can play around with the system for a while to navigate there and figure it out. But if you don't know about those, and you don't know how to talk to Alexa, and you don't, right, you need to know some new things. And these gods that we're building in the sky, whether it's Alexa or Siri or Google, have a certain way you can talk to them, right? It'll get more and more human-like over time because that's what they're trying to do. I mean, Amazon has 10,000 people working just on Alexa. And they're looking through, what do we utter to Alexa? What are we trying to do with Alexa? And how do we more map Alexa to what we're trying to do, right? So it'll get better over time, but there still is going to be some computerness to it that you're going to have to learn to interact with, and you're going to need to understand people who are going to be seen as Renaissance people in the future. They're going to have a real good framework for how the world works, right? What's possible? How do I mean, it's sort of funny, but you can get gumbo from New Orleans shipped to your house, right?
Right.
Well, if you know that, then all of a sudden you're having a better life, right? And soon you're going to be able to transact with people in new ways, and play games with people in new ways, and work with people in new ways. And that'll be all fairly interesting. But takes some time,
Right.
takes
And
some
it's gonna be intense. You know what, Robert, I want to be careful of your time because I know we're at the top of the
time.
hour and I know you're slammed. So I want to be very careful with your time. But
Yeah,
I
let's
want
go.
to make sure the audience knows how to find your book. So first of all, let's tell the audience how to find your book,
It,
how to find out about your work. I I
it's on
just
Amazon.
yeah,
Thanks.
it's
It's on
what's
Amazon. You just search for the Infinite Retina on Amazon, and you can buy it on Kindle or on paper. And it's great. Kindle can read it to you too.
I know I
That's
love
something
that
I
part of
just learned.
Kindle.
Yeah. So a lot of
I
people don't know
figured
that.
that
Yeah.
out a few months ago. I didn't even realize that and one of my friends is blind said, "Oh, I buy Kindle and it reads it to me." I'm like, "Oh," because I've been using
Yeah.
buying Audible, but Audible's like 3 times anyway more expensive.
Yeah.
But so
No,
and
and
how
and
about
that
social
and that
media?
that's an example of how I mean I remember being at Microsoft 15 years ago and meeting the team that was doing the research on voice response, right, on voice and computer voices. And it was real inaccurate back then, but the industry has been spending billions and billions of dollars because it's turned into something important. Siri made Apple more money in one day than it's ever made on any other acquisition, right? So there's a lot of investment being done in voice and AI that recognizes that. And so now your systems are getting better and better at reading to you. And 5 years from now, they're going to be much more human-like than they are today, right?
It's fascinating.
So, yeah, you're going to be talking to people, you know, and it's going to be hard to tell that it's a computer that you're talking to, right?
Huh.
You're already seeing examples of that. Google is doing that, and right now it's fairly easy to tell because the computer is fairly stupid, which is sort of funny. Uh, you know, Google understands every question humans have ever asked it, but it's still pretty stupid about it, right? But most people are gonna think it's really smart because you can ask it any question and get an answer. But but the stupidness about it is gonna get less and less over time. It's gonna get smarter and smarter about talking to us. Anyways, that's an aside.
So
Amazon, and then I'm on Twitter. I
I
live on
know.
Twitter, but I'm
Well,
on LinkedIn and
I love
Facebook
your
too.
work.
But
I highly recommend the book. He obviously Robert's brilliant, and I love that he's a father and that he, is
I'm not
because
so sure I'm brilliant. I'm really good at talking to a lot of people who are brilliant and seeing the patterns.
seeing the
you know,
patterns. I think that's the
yeah,
key, seeing the patterns. So, well,
yeah.
Robert, thank you for being on the show. I love, love, love
Thanks.
what you're doing, and really highly recommend this book, and highly recommend following Robert's work. And I'd love for you to come back on and tell us more. But I'm fascinated
Well,
with the
yeah.
different industries that y'all
The
focused
next
on.
24, the next 24 months are going to be pretty crazy. So,
I know, I
yeah.
know. I won't make you predict who's going to win the election. I did make you
Well,
tell me
this will come.
before.
This will come out in a week, right? So after the election's probably going to be decided. A good chance Biden wins, but God knows, my friend had an AI that predicted Trump was going to win, and his AI actually was pretty accurate. He only messed up on 2 states so far, 1 or 2 states so far. So it's really
The
close.
computers
It's
know
really
better than we do. The computers know our minds better than we do.
well. It's not that they know our minds. It's that they can see the patterns really
The
fast,
patterns.
right? And they can count up things really fast. And in a way, what was interesting about last night is seeing the vote totals come in. Because when I was a kid, we the pollsters predicted winners because they knew how to poll properly. Now the polls are really hard to do because we don't answer the phones anymore and we don't tell people the truth.
Right.
So
I'm not
it's
going to tell you who I'm voting for if you call me out of the blue. I'm not going to answer it. And I'm definitely not going to tell you because I feel like that's my business, even though I tell people all the time on air.
yeah. And the pollsters will get better at figuring out the error rates. My friend's AI had an extra push on Trump because he knew people were lying to polls, and so he was watching different inputs. But it's pretty close either way. By the time this is up, we'll have a new president, and
That's right.
it's
That's right.
a good chance it's Biden, but it's
I
still,
hope a new
even if
president too.
even if it's Biden, it's going to be looked at for a while, right? Because nobody is going to accept the first count, no matter who wins,
Yeah.
right? And so it's going to be looked at 3 or 4 times before the final tally is in. But I'm hopeful still. But it is a very, no matter who wins, it's a very divided country.
Yeah, it is.
And it shows how different our approaches are to things. So it'll be interesting to watch as these new technologies come, how people approach that world. So
I agree. Well, I highly recommend Robert's work. He's an amazing man, and
thank you.
I look forward to knowing who our president is going to be. But
Yeah.
only if it's what I want. Otherwise, let's just stay in limbo. I'd rather stay in limbo, please, than sorry.
Nobody got 100% of what they want last night, even on the Trump side, right? It's like, shit, we might lose. Nobody got what they wanted. This country is very divided. So it'll be interesting to see where the policies go from here, and where things go. Yeah, that's outside of my scope. I like studying technology better. It's a little easier to figure out sometimes.
More predictable.
Yeah, it's more predictable because it's more something you can look at and say, okay, Apple has retail stores, Facebook doesn't, so therefore Apple has an advantage here and not there, and Facebook doesn't there. But it's a interesting time to be alive for sure.
I agree. I agree. So, well, thank you, Robert, for being on the show. Thanks to my audience. I just love Robert's work. His book has such interesting examples. So, you want to know more about the future? Buy his book. So, thank you, Robert. Thanks to everyone. All right.